All right, welcome everyone. Today, we're going to dive deep into the very essence of human physiology, the body's internal sea. And look, for you as future clinicians, getting a handle on this stuff isn't just about passing an exam, it is the foundation of taking care of patients. Understanding fluid and electrolytes is absolutely critical.
Okay, let's kick things off with a big foundational number. On average, about 60% of an adult's body is fluid. But you've got to understand, this isn't just a bag of water. It's this incredibly complex, dynamic solution of ions and other substances. It's the stage where, the whole drama of life plays out.
The great physiologist Claude Bernard, way back in the 19th century, he had a name for this, the milieu intérieur. He was really the first to get that this isn't just some passive liquid. It's a super precisely controlled private ocean that every single one of our cells relies on. Honestly, you could say that all of modern medicine is built on the idea of managing this internal environment. So here's what we're going to cover today. We'll look at this internal sea, we'll break it down into its two main worlds, check out their unique ionic fingerprints, see who the guardians of balance are, and then what happens when it all goes wrong. Let's dive in.
All right, section 1. So first up, let's really nail down why this internal environment is so critical. What's its main job?
Just try to wrap your head around the scale of this. You've got somewhere between 35 and 40 trillion cells in your body. And every single one, from a brain cell to a muscle cell, is swimming in this same fluid. It's their lifeline. It's where they get their ions, their oxygen, all the nutrients they need, not just to live, but to work and talk to each other. Okay, moving on. So, we've got all this fluid, right? The big question now is, how is it all organized? Because it's definitely not just one big sloshing pool.
And this is where the genius of the body's design really comes in. It's all about compartmentalization. Getting a handle on this division is absolutely the first step to mastering fluid and electrolyte management in a clinical setting.
So here it is, the Great Divide. And just look at the numbers here. A full 2/3 of all that fluid is actually inside our cells. We call that the intracellular compartment. The other third? That's on the outside. And these have names, of course. We've got the intracellular fluid, or ICF, that's the world inside the cell, and then there's the extracellular fluid, or ECF. That's the internal environment we were just talking about. Think of them as two totally separate but, and this is key, deeply interconnected worlds, with the cell membrane as the border.
All right, time to zoom in a bit. We know we've got these two compartments, but what actually makes them different? What gives them their unique character?
So, why is this separation so incredibly important? Well, the answer is all about their chemical makeup, specifically their ions. They have these totally different chemical fingerprints, and that difference is what makes normal cell function possible.
Just take a look at this table. The difference is, well, it's black and white, there's no gray area. Outside the cell, in the ECF, it's loaded with sodium and chloride. But step inside the cell into the ICF and suddenly it's all about potassium and phosphates. This isn't just a minor detail, you guys. This is a fundamental design principle of life.
Here's an easy way to remember it. Just think of the ECF as a kind of salty ocean, a lot like the ancient seas where life first evolved. In this ocean, sodium is king. It's the big shot positive ion running the show.
But the second you cross that cell membrane, boom, you're in potassium's kingdom. All the machinery inside the cell, the enzymes, the organelles, the whole works, it's all built to operate in this high potassium world. And this is so critical. That huge difference in concentration, that steep gradient that's maintained by the sodium-potassium pump, that's what creates the electrical potential across the membrane that lets our nerves fire and our muscles contract.
Okay, so that leads to the next big question, right? How on earth does the body work so hard 24/7 to keep this critical balance? Sodium high on the outside, potassium high on the inside. How does it keep everything stable? Let's zoom back out and look at the big picture.
The way the body pulls off this incredible balancing act is through a process called homeostasis. The American physiologist Walter Cannon came up with the term. And it's not a static state. It's a dynamic, constant process of tweaking and regulating to keep that internal sea just right for life.
The best way to think about this is like the body's own internal logistics network. You've got the lungs bringing in O2, the GI tract absorbing all the good stuff like nutrients and water, the liver is the main processing plant, and then you have the kidneys. The kidneys are the absolute masters here, meticulously managing ion levels and getting rid of waste to keep that internal balance perfect.
So, how do they do all this? The main control system is something called negative feedback. It's pretty simple, really. If something, say blood pressure, gets too high, the body triggers a response to bring it back down. If it gets too low, it triggers a response to bring it back up. It's this constant push-pull, this opposition that keeps everything in balance. Okay, last section. Let's connect all this physiology to the real world, to the bedside. What happens when these amazing control systems start to fail? What does that actually look like in a patient?
It is so important to understand just how razor-thin the margin for error is here. The range for life is incredibly narrow. I mean, look at this quote. An 11-degree Fahrenheit rise in body temp can kick off a vicious cycle that just destroys cells. And the exact same thing is true for the chemistry of our internal environment.
This table really lays out the clinical stakes, and these aren't just numbers on a page. This is what you are going to see on the wards. Just look at potassium. That normal range is unbelievably tight. If it drops too low, your patient could become paralyzed because their nerves can't fire. If it goes just a little too high, say double the normal amount, their heart can literally stop. Same with calcium. If it drops by half, you can see these intense tetanic muscle contractions.
So here's the absolute #1 take-home message for every single one of you. What might look like a tiny little change on a lab report can have absolutely catastrophic results for your patient. And your ability to look at those numbers and know what to do comes directly from understanding the physiology we've just been talking about.
And that right there is why this all matters so much. As a clinician, your job is basically to be an external guardian for your patient's internal C. You're going to be monitoring their levels, figuring out the why behind an imbalance, and then stepping in to fix it, to restore homeostasis. Really, you can think of almost any disease as, at its core, a state of disrupted homeostasis.
So let's end with a little clinical vignette for you to chew on, something to take with you into your studies and onto the wards. Okay, picture this. A patient comes in, they're feeling weak all over, and you see some really abnormal things on their ECG. Based on everything we've just discussed, what's the #1 electrolyte imbalance that should be screaming out at you from their internal environment? How would you take this knowledge and apply it right now to help that person?